I want to ask you about COVID because that's obviously
Sure.
classic disaster capitalism. First of all, what are your fears about what's happening with around COVID, and do you see any opportunities that could be positive coming out of it?
I do. In terms of opportunities. I mean, I think that this should be a period where we are all contemplating what is essential in life. With we maybe have more time to do it. Those of us who have the extraordinary privilege of being able to shelter in place, to be in our homes. Um, And if we have that privilege, then we are acutely aware of who makes that possible. I mean, there has been, I think, an unveiling of the of the working class. I mean, it's being called essential work, but really we're just talking about the working class, the people who grow the food, you know, stock the shelves, deliver it, make the stuff of life. And we live in a system that deliberately invisibilizes that. Um, and I think one of the first things that happened with the pandemic when we weren't sure how it was spreading, if it was on surfaces, or if it was just airborne, it made us acutely aware of the central lie, I think, of capitalism, which is the idea of 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 individual self-sufficiency. None of us are islands. We are in a web of interdependent relationships that are rendered invisible by various lies that we tell ourselves. And I think that this crisis, as so many crises do, just pulled back the veil, and we had to think, well, who touched what I'm touching? Who touched who touched this doorknob? Who touched this box? And there was this, I think, outpouring of love for the people who were keeping us alive. So we need to hold on to that. We need to build on that. Um, and and I think as we reopen, when we get on the other side of this, I don't think we should go back to normal. Normal was a crisis. um, we need to be more selective about what we tell ourselves we can't live without. I hope that we've learned that we can travel less. I feel like that's one of my biggest takeaways is I don't want to go back to the amount of travel and fossil fuels I was burning before. I want my travel to be essential. And I think that that's the sort of governing principle that we need in our lives right now. We are in a climate emergency, and we need to pare things down to what is essential, and we need to do what is required in the face of the crisis. So I think that one of the things we have learned, Kim, I think, and this is where my most positive spin that I can give is, um, I've noticed a huge shift since I've been talking to people about the climate crisis over the past decade. Um, in the year before the pandemic, I spent a lot of time talking to people. I published on Fire. I did a lot of events with Sunrise. I noticed a huge shift in people's sense of this is a real crisis. Yes, capitalism is in conflict with what we need to do in the face of the crisis. Yes, it requires massive change, but we can't do that. We as humans are not capable of massive change. So I was not encountering like um, ideological debates like, can market mechanisms actually solve this for us? I was having those debates when This Changes Everything came out or when the LEAP manifesto came out. Now it was, are we doomed or are we not doomed? Right? Are humans capable of massive change on a deadline? And so I guess the shiniest silver lining I can come up with when it comes to COVID is we all now have bodily experience of massive change. Um, and Kim Stanley Robinson, the science fiction writer, talked about how we have this feeling that we all now have a feeling that we're in a science fiction novel that we're writing together. Um, so when I was writing on Fire, I was using the example of how we changed during the Great Depression or after the Second World War. But that was before I was alive. And now we can say, okay, well, we faced a crisis by shutting everything down that we needed to shut down, by retooling factories to produce essential medical gear. Um, we by handing communication over to scientists and experts, and saying we have to be guided by science. So I think we have a better sense now of what it, Greta is out there day in, day out saying, treat it like an emergency, right? And I think now we know what that means a little bit more. And it's so clear that we, to some extent, are treating COVID like an emergency, though not enough, and certainly not in Ontario, or at least not until recently. Um, but we are not treating the climate crisis like an emergency.